We left off on Wednesday with adding a adding a second drive to server 3 for storage purposes. So that's what we did on Wednesday. We did not configure it because it was end of class. Next week is over storage. Test out chapter 5 is all over storage.
I was looking at our, I think it was the lab installation. So let's take a screenshot of them.
I've already graded all that. Don't you have a grade for it in the grade book? Did I not grade that?
Yeah, no, you didn't. Oh, yeah, you did. I lied to you.
I thought I graded it. Like I just looked at y'all's screen and seen it was done. You didn't have to turn actually anything in, so. So we need to configure storage. In the olden days, you went in partition drives. Sometimes created one partition or two partitions to create different volume letters like C and D drive and E drive and stuff to help separate out data. But then big data happened. I always go to YouTube because this is where all the useless stuff gets sent and companies are collecting data on everybody. But what's the big thing? Tracking, right? Being tracked. The airline started recording every flight that everybody ever took. About 1980 to 1982, they started keeping a database of it. So by the 90s, it was up into the petabytes in size. With every flight that anybody had ever took, and they ran analytics on it, so they would know, the percent chance of you taking your flight or missing it. That way, they started overbooking planes based on each individual person's prior history and stuff. And I don't know what size it is now, but huge data. YouTube's one of the big ones because useless stuff like, just sitting and watching to see if eggs are going to hatch or not because somebody's live streaming. I don't know who's live streaming that, but learning to be, a YouTuber is cool. So I just started that at 6:30 this morning. They could potentially start breaking out today through Monday. One of the days they could all be dead and nothing happened. So anywhere from 0 to 17 could hatch at this point in time. But big data caused it to where these companies, these data centers you go into, you can't just start grabbing hard drives like this and SSDs and stuff and putting them into the computers and going in to disk management here and finding the disk, initializing it, and partitioning it and stuff by hand. You can't do that because you're normally having to add more hard drives, like big racks of hard drives at a time, hundreds or thousands of them at a time, because of the amount of data that's being stored. You can't just go to each one of them and partition and manage it that way. So they've created a new subsystem, cloud computing platforms like VMware, vSphere products. The Microsoft has something called Storage Space now. And it's basically I guess you kind of consider it an artificial and AI, not truly AI system, but it's another way to look at storage, and that you feed a bunch of drives into this database type thing, and it automatically creates the partitions and stuff on the multiple drives. That's what we're going to go into. We're not going to use the disk management and partition stuff the old way. We're going to use storage pools. Some other cool things storage pools will do, this new type of software, it can do things like data deduplication. Deduplication, it can find duplicate data because There's people store, you get an email come in and somebody says, ooh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to forward this email to everybody in the company. That happens. If you ever, some of y'all haven't worked anywhere yet, but there's always 2 or 3 people that want to be funny and forward everything to everybody. So now there's 20,000 emails of Aunt Flo's ugly cake recipe. There's actually an ugly cake recipe out there, but it's like a picture of it. Why do we need to store it 20,000 times in everybody's email box? I mean, it does have to be there, but actually on the hard drive, you only really need those zeros and ones one time. And you could link to that 20,000 or whatever times. Data deduplication will go through, and once it finds lots of duplicates like that, it'll just delete the duplicates and make pointers to just one chunk of data. You can't really do that with regular, or you can't do that with regular partitioning. You can do that through this new storage space that Microsoft has. That's what we want to set up today. We talk about it some in test out. We want to go ahead and at least get it deployed, and then give you the rest of the time to finish test out chapter 4. Hopefully you brought your headphones. Excitement to like do the quizzes and labs and test out. You're logging into server 1 is what you're doing.
No. I do know that, okay?
Server 3 just has a command line interface. So yeah, we're not going to use server 3 because storage pools is a graphical interface where you could do PowerShell commands, but that's wow. I mean, if you're using Microsoft and if YouTube was using Microsoft, then yes, they would probably write PowerShell scripts to set up storage space to keep adding new hard drives for people that's, you know, streaming crap.
500 hours per minute or something?
Something like that, 300 to 500. Well, I think the last actual statistics, which was quite a few years ago, was 300 to 400 hours a minute. Well, I said 500 hours a minute because I figure it's definitely increased. I don't know if they've put out any new statistics or not.
No, 500 hours.
2020.
Three-
So I'm probably behind. It's probably more than 500 hours a minute now.
30,000 hours per hour.
Crazy. Do you have disk 3 added in? Server 3? Then yeah, you have to get caught up.
5 billion videos to watch it for 24 hours.
Yeah, a quarter of those are watched by my daughter and son when they get home from school.
I don't watch video. That's all I do.
Okay. We've logged into server 1. Server manager should be open. You should have file and storage services clicked on the left side. You should have disk highlighted. We should find a 10 gigabyte disk offline. Cool. If you see that, then we can proceed. If you think you've added it and you don't see it, refresh the page. And now let's go ahead and click on storage pools. Primordial. Have you ever heard of the primordial ooze? What is that? The goop that life just magically all of a sudden formed from, what scientists think.
Very scientific explanation.
Yeah. We've got this goop of amino acids, this primordial ooze, and life sprang forth. Okay. So that's their imagination. So primordial storage is the goop. They lots of physical hard disks. They're just piled in that storage is going to just spring forth from. That's basically primordial is we're going to apply physical disk into this primordial pool. So we're pooling lots of disks together. Let's give you some visual. Let's give you a visual here. This thing go, there we go. We'll give you a visual of what we're talking about, lots of disk. Here's a pod of 60 drives. And you know, what are drive sizes now? 14 to 20 terabytes? I haven't looked up the latest platter drive.
I suppose like commercial market drives get a lot bigger than that.
So lots of pictures of this whole back place. But are they going to show it in the rack? I don't know. Nope, we got way off of track. Yeah, so $135 terabytes for $12,000, but when was this? 2011. So they still making these, but it's petabytes now, not terabytes. Yep, not even close. So they've got new systems out there.
How far away are we?
I don't know. So look at this one. Each one of these rows of fans, each one of these boxes has those packs of drives in them. Just think, 60 drives in each one of those, and you're running 14 to 18 terabyte drives in them. You're looking at multi-petabytes per rack here of storage. That's some of what we are kind of talking about primordial storage here. We're going to put in our 10 gig disk. It'll be great. We'll start up here with create a new storage pool. It's almost kind of the same way that if you're setting up a hardware RAID controller, you would set up a group of disks that you're going to implement into a specific type of RAID, RAID 1, RAID 10, preferred RAID now, but RAID 1 or RAID 10 would be the two RAIDs you'd likely mess with. RAID 5 is kind of obsolete. It's too slow to rebuild with a failed drive nowadays. But you set up some type of RAID and you link them all together into this big pool. And then you'd take that big pool and you'd create what's known as virtual disk or LUNs. And you'd specify, out of that pool of drives that you rated together, different virtual disks that you're going to present to the operating system as hard drives. So if you had 10 petabytes, you had a huge array of stuff, you want to probably send 10 petabytes to a single server. You'd probably want to break that up into, maybe 2 to 20 terabyte virtual disk to an operating system. Sort of what this primordial storage is going to do. We're going to add a storage and full of physical drive. We're going to create a virtual disk, and we could create multiple virtual disks across this 10 gig span. And then we're going to present that to an operating system so the operating system can format it with FAT32 NTFS.
It's kind of fun, but can you create like two separate RAIDs that work together? So like RAID 0 we split. the file
Yeah,
into
that's
two-
RAID 10 is mirroring and RAID 0 working together.
Right. So could you set a system like you run RAID 0 for performance, but on the back end of that, you run another RAID, what is it, one that?
It's RAID 1.
Two different hard drives?
Yeah, it's RAID 1. That's exactly what RAID 10 is. 1 plus 0.
Oh, it is? That's what it is?
Yep. Takes 4 drives as the min because you have to have 2 that are like mirrored and 2 mirrored and then striped across the 2. You do mirrored pairs first, and then you stripe the mirrored pairs. So 4, 6, 8, 10 drives, so forth. Okay, let's create a new storage pool. We got to give it a name. Pool 01 01. Creative. Next. Here's where you would select all of the drives. It could be, if you connect to the backblaze system, it'd be a lot of drives up there. The backblaze may already pull those 60 into a single RAID, and then you might be pulling multiple of those boxes showing up here. So depending on how it's being presented, let's go and go next. And create. I wish it auto checked. Go and create a virtual disk when the wizard closes, because right now we pulled, in our case, it's just one drive, but it could have been hundreds of drives together into one huge pool that this storage pool thing is going to control. So I'm going to hit a checkbox, create a new virtual disk when this wizard closes. I'm going to close. In our case, we've only got 10 gigs, so we're only going to create one virtual disk. But if this ended up being a whole bunch of drives and being like 100 petabyte size, you probably want to break that up into smaller chunks to present to servers, depending on your situation. So hit OK. It brings up a new wizard. If you didn't select it, you would have to highlight your storage pool and then go to task and create a new virtual disk on it. But we'll go next. Virtual disk. What? So vpool 01. Why not VD01? Because that's short for venereal disease, and vpool 01 is probably VP01, maybe.
Yeah, all you can do is delete OOL. What I said.
Because it's not an actual virtual pool, it's a virtual disk. So VO1, we're not going to do VD up there. It's just not appropriate. VO1, virtual 01. We're going to go next. Be real careful with acronyms. The company is ever making something up. Okay, we're off topic right now. ASU BB Active Directory. That is our, I think, primary DNS server, probably our forest or main controller. I've seen that for years, and I was like, why is ASU bad? Only about 2-3 years ago did it finally click when I was working for IT and stuff and looking at it again. It's like, they name, oh, ASUB Active Directory. Oh, okay. It's not ASU bad. That's all I can see.
Yeah.
I can't see ASU BB Active Directory server. Be careful with acronyms. I mean, that's not terrible, but other acronyms can be pretty bad. So as we go next, we're just doing a simple volume. We can't mirror or do any type of parity because we only have one disk that we added into the pool. So our virtual disk is not going to be back with any type of redundancy. We'll go next. Provisioning. Yeah, fixed, whatever. It's going to go ahead and use up all of that storage space right away. Maximum size. This size here, this is where if we had petabytes, we could specify. Now I only want a terabyte. What we can, it only goes the terabyte range. Okay. 10 terabytes or whatever. And then you go create another virtual disk and use another 10 terabytes. So use up all of that petabyte space. And a whole bunch of disks, and then you could present them to different servers. Coolness stuff. Okay, let's create it. Now it has a checkbox at the end. We created a virtual disk. This is now what is being presented to the operating system. The operating system is going to see it like an actual hard drive that you could buy off the shelf at Best Buy, that you'd plug into your computer. That's what the virtual disk is. It's not a real physical disk, because it's a virtual disk on top of possibly multiple or hundreds of physical hard drives linked together in different RAID formats. But for this lab, we're just, again, using the one disk to play with. So now we're presenting that to the operating system. The operating system sees it as a blank disk with starting at sector 0 and ending at sector, whatever 9 gig sector ends at. And the operating system can't do anything with the blank disk. It's actually got to write down index, and kind of like once they pave the street, they got to put down, stripes and stuff so people can stay in their lane. That's what we got to do. So data can stay in its lane. We're going to close this. It auto pops up the new volume wizard. And now we can, this is kind of partitioning the drive like old school, where you could create a C drive, D drive, partition it out however you want it to. We're picking server 3, picking the only virtual disk available to us, and moving on. Size, if I wanted to have more than one partition on here, I would type something smaller, but I'm just going to leave the maximum there. Drive letter E. Notice if you took operating systems class, Linux had everything under the root folder / CD-ROMs, thumb drives, everything was just a folder underneath it. Windows Server actually came from VAX BMX Unix. VAX BMS Unix. So it's actually got a Linux kernel, not a Linux kernel, sorry, a commercial Unix kernel, what the Windows Server came from. And because it was Unix, you can map things to a folder. You can theoretically have more than 26 drives. You run out of letters in the alphabet. What are you going to do? Microsoft doesn't have that.
Oh.
They stop at Z. So because they stole a lot of stuff from Unix, the NTFS file system, you can map to a folder. So you can have a C drive and not have any other drive letters, map everything, any other storage to a folder underneath that C, and be more like a Unix system. But we're going to leave it at E drive and go ahead and click next. Volume name, data. Data from Star Trek. When we come to Android. Positronic brain. Okay.
Well, you know how young we are. We watch Star Trek. You do 100,000.
Star Trek: The Next Generation. You got to be as Trekkie. I mean, I wasn't even born with Captain Kirk. I've seen all of those.
Yeah, we're doing darker.
60s. I think 63.
Oh, okay. I was far off.
63 to 60, somewhere. I'd have to look it up exactly. I'm pretty sure it's 60s anyway. So, and he went to space for real. Now we run up to data deduplication here. Sweet, let's turn on data deduplication for general purpose file server. Okay, well, then you didn't catch up with everything. You didn't install the data duplication role service on Monday, was it? When did we install the roles? I think it was Monday.
Maybe that was the day where I was here. To post that video. I did all. I looked at all the videos and I want to use it.
Oh no. So yeah, you didn't install the data deduplication on server 3. Maybe you installed it on one of the other servers. I don't know. You can cancel and go and add the data deduplication service on server 3 and rerun this wizard. I would cancel and go do that. It's easier to set it up right now than, I mean, you can set up data deduplication later, but probably best just to cancel and go install that service. Data deduplication has to have a schedule set, otherwise it won't run. If I click set data deduplication here, it's enabled in the background, but that doesn't actually, intuitively you'd think that it would just run whenever the server wasn't busy and it'd do it automatically. No, it won't. I learned the hard way. Waited a week on it and never did anything. You have to at least set one schedule for it to optimize, because apparently it never going to run in the background randomly. You can let it run for up to 6 hours. Our little 10 gig thing, it would run less than an hour and it'd work, but I'm just going to click the checkbox and click OK. But that's a trick, has to have that set. I know that it's the hard way. Normally how I learn stuff. Okay, so next, and create. We'll create as a storage pool. Isn't that neat? Yes, amazing stuff. So because some people are behind, y'all need to catch up. We're not going to do the next part. Do have to hit refresh for it to populate, show everything here. I guess I have to click on storage pool 1. There we go. Shows me the physical disk, virtual disk, and stuff. Doesn't show me my volume I just did. Doesn't show my E drive. I have to click on volumes and actually see E drive here with data under server 3. So next week we'll get into creating shares. You're not going to do this, but next week we'll create a share on that E drive so that people say on our Windows 10 client machine can access that server and store files and stuff on it. We'll create about 1 gigabyte of data. And then we'll look at it Friday next week and see if the data deduplicated stuff. But that'll be fun. Definitely. Monday's class is not there. Did I record Monday's class?